This is The Bottom Line, a show designed to help Australian businesses succeed. On the show, you'll hear from leading Australian business owners as they share the lessons they've learned building their companies. You'll learn from their successes as well as some of the challenges they faced along the way. We also talk to experts from a range of fields who share specialised techniques you can use to improve your business. I'm your host, Savan Tuna, and I'm a director at Alexander Spencer, and I'm really passionate about helping Australian businesses succeed. Today, we're speaking with Dean Arnold. Dean is the founder and CEO of PublicSquare, a fintech company in the rent-to-own home industry. In today's episode, Dean takes us through the journey of founding PublicSquare and expanding PublicSquare over time. You'll learn what rent-to-own home is, how it works, and the role of technology and innovation in the property space. Dean shares his advice for aspiring tech entrepreneurs, managing investors, and the importance of scalability in a startup. Let's jump in. Hi, Dean. Thank you so much for joining me on The Bottom Line today. For those that don't know you, can you please tell us a little about yourself?
Yeah, thanks for having me. So I'm Dean. I'm based in Australia between Brisbane and Sydney. I am an early stage fintech founder and CEO, and I've founded a company called PublicSquare. We are a fintech company operating in the rent-to-buy real estate space in Australia. I should say the rent-to-buy 2.0 because a lot of people know that rent-to-buy has been around for a long time, but not the way we're doing it. And I've been building startups and companies for near on 15 years now. When COVID happened, I was living in Hong Kong. I'd been in Hong Kong and Shanghai for about 9 years. And I was prematurely forced to come back to Australia, but it was a good thing because I was able to sell my business at the time and have a really deep think and do some real experimentation before I decided to come back here and start working on this current company.
Awesome. Really quickly, Hong Kong, Shanghai. So what were you there for before you started PublicSquare?
Well, I had a few companies, but the main one was an e-commerce big data / IP company. So we would basically do high frequency scanning of all the major e-commerce platforms, mainly mainland China. And in the early days, there were loads and loads of e-commerce platforms sort of vying for competition. So we had to scan dozens of these sites and produce all this data for our clients through like a SaaS platform. But over the years, it sort of became only one or two big platforms in the end.
So the question is can you speak Mandarin Cantonese?
It's getting a bit rusty, not Cantonese, like nothing Cantonese-wise.
Mandarin, obviously.
Mandarin a bit, yeah. I can speak Taxinese.
You see some of those guys online. I've seen one Australian lady that speaks like awesome Mandarin and shit. And it's funny watching the reaction of the locals of this white girl speaking Mandarin. It's amazing. So let's talk about PublicSquare. You came back to Australia due to obvious reasons, and then you founded PublicSquare. How does an entrepreneur find a problem and then find a solution for it? Was it something you always wanted to do? How did you come up with this as a business, as a fintech startup?
In my 20s, I was really passive about the problems and the companies that I worked on. It was just, here's an idea, I can do it. Bam, I've already got some connection or an opportunity, let's do it. But over the years, I sort of realized it's not the way to build a business. You make all your progress in the decision and then the execution is necessary. But really, you have to take stock and think deeply about what you're going to work on and who you're going to work on it with and who you're going to bring along for the ride. So through COVID, I just sold my company. I had plenty of time to think about what I really wanted to do next. And I took a really macro framework when deciding to work on this rent-to-buy homes company. And really, it came down to, the realization that doing hard tech is sort of too hard. There's really only maybe less than 1,000 serious world-class engineers in the world that can do hard tech. And if you're not one of them, and I'm not, then what are you going to do? You're probably wasting your time, especially if you're going to be trying to do that in Australia. And I've had the experience of working on hard tech problems before and working with world-class talent. And as soon as they're gone, you're in deep trouble. and then the other side, and why would they work for you? If they're a 1 in 1,000 talent, they're going to go off and do their own thing. So on the other side, soft tech is sort of too easy. It's easily replicated, and there's just too many tools available now that just make it easier than ever to work on all these soft. And a lot of these businesses are just becoming commoditized. You're doing anything in e-commerce, you're doing anything in SaaS. Well, now you've got no code, low code for SaaS, which is amazing what you can do. And actually, probably that's my best proficiency, learning how to use all these tools and leverage all these tools. So what are you left with? It's not soft tech and hard tech. You could call it IP or a political advantage or maybe even better, ownership. So you want to have ownership in something. So your customers can't churn, your business partners can't churn. You can build a long-term business without this fear of technical overhead or being replaced by the next best product. Also in software, if you're doing something on that soft side, then you've always got legacy problems because every 12 months, there's a better tool stack to use. And I did see this coming with ChatGPT and all the AI tool. I mean, there's a lot of people having to make some hard decisions now and decide if they really have a viable business going ahead in the software space. So PublicSquare is unique in that way. It's a very viable business because it's in property and requires hard assets and capital and whatnot. It's not the hottest business. I don't worry about people replicating the business or the next developer copying the next hot thing. And it just provides something that's just so fundamental to the Australian way of life. And it's just always in the news cycle. That's where it all really started. And I was interested in this kind of rent to buy model. I didn't know that other companies were doing it. I was just kind of, dreaming up different kinds of property models for a number of years as I was thinking about ways to sort of put my own money to work in Australia. I looked at Airbnb models and how they would scale up and how I could do something innovative. That way I looked at these kind of shared equity models and they didn't make sense much at all. But the rent to buy was just a really interesting hedge that really seemed to provide a lot of value for all the participants in the model.
So for those that don't know rent to buy, just really briefly, what is rent to buy?
So our brand of rent to buy is a bit different. I guess it makes sense to explain the old way first. The old way was developers, flippers, they'd have a limited number of homes. They were struggling to sell the property. So they'd come up with this way to sort of, let's say, lower quality or people with bad credit into the space. And they'd sell them a home, usually over market value, and then come what may with those. They've sold the home. Ultimately, they own the property. But in our model, we let the customers choose their own home. They pay a 2.5%, what we call Kickstarter contribution. They move into the home technically as renters, and then they pay a higher than market rental rates per week. But 40% of that amount that they pay accrues into what we call a purchase offset, which is essentially a deduction on the final purchase price of the home. So it's kind of powerful because the customers are in a model that allows it's like a forced saving mechanism in an appreciating asset. And that's one of the lines I heard from this famous founder in the US for a company called Divvy Homes, which really pioneered this rent to buy 2.0 model. And now, they're a huge company now. They're closing, near on 30 homes a day. They're backed by Andreessen Horowitz, very well established company. They're in the Valley. And that's what she said. And, just going back to your former question, when I heard a podcast with her, with Jason Calacanis in Startups Weekly, before he had this new one that I listened to, I heard that podcast and I'd been turning this idea over in my head and I had a few models and sheets and I was thinking about it a lot as the potential next business. I heard that interview and I was just blown away. I was blown away because I didn't know someone else was doing it. And then I realized that it was working so well in the US, helping so many people. And the timing was just perfect in Australia for doing this. And in fact, in the US, you can still buy a home for $200,000 Australian or $250,000. I mean, because you have those options there. And on top of that, you also have a much wider range of mortgage products, which we don't have here. And their income to home ratio is like almost half of what it is for us here. So buying a home now in Australia over the last couple of decades, theoretically so much harder in Australia, although we do have cheaper healthcare and these other, pressure relievers for household finances here that they don't have in the US. That's true. But still, if the product was working in that well and has been working so well in the US for a number of years, then, the basic premise was it should work incredibly well. And I think the demand that we've experienced has kind of proved that the problem is enormous here and that the demand and the willingness to pay for this kind of product is also here in Australia.
Yeah, you're solving an awesome problem. I've got obviously, a lot of clients in our accounting firm and some of the older ones that have got kids that are sort of getting to that teenager things. The most common thing that my clients tell me that have got kids, if I don't help my kids, I don't know how they're going to ever be able to afford a home. That sentence is actually said to me by my older clients that have got kids on a regular basis. So first and foremost, thank you for helping those kids eventually buy a home, because in a way, what I liked about what you said there is it's saving that deposit. For you, it's 2.5%. Yes, you pay above market rent, but if you own your own home, you need to save. You need to be able to have a position to save. So you have to still do all the things you need to do to be able to own a home, but it allows that person to get in an appreciating asset, which is really awesome. So tell us about PublicSquare and how you do it, and how do we get into getting the solution for the consumer?
Well, we're focused on the user experience. So we're doing what a fintech company should do. It doesn't matter if you're a renter or a buyer, or you're coming into a rental or coming in to buy a property, the experience is pretty terrible all around, no matter how you look at it. So when I first started, I just wasn't sure about the demand. I thought, okay, is this going to be, predominantly low socioeconomic families, disadvantaged households? Is it an alternative to like an NDIS program? Is it something like that? Still has merit, but it probably wouldn't be something that I'd want to build a business out in that space. And what I found really quickly was that it's not exclusive to just the first-time home buyers or just blue collar. This is a problem, not being able to save a home loan deposit, or let's say not wanting to wait 5 to 10 years to save a home loan deposit applies to just about everybody. There's certain groups that it's more difficult for, but I think you hit the nail on the head when you say the one thing that everyone aligns is if you don't have money from someone else, from your parents, if they're not willing to sort of cash out some equity in their own home, or just put up the cash for a 10 or 20% deposit, then you're always going to have this problem at the moment, with the cost of real estate here and the cost of living. So the way we do it is we just have a really efficient onboarding process, nice, easy to use forms, a lot of automation in the beginning to sort of get you to a pre-approval and let you know your buying power. And then we connect them to an application manager who takes the process forward. And then, it's really just like a mortgage application process, or a really, involved rental application process. Once they're fully approved, they go out and choose the property that they like in the open market.
So it's not select like these cheapy little homes in 300 kilometers from a major city. It's actually they go and choose the home that they want.
A lot of the alternative home buying platforms and products in Australia have tried sort of assigning cookie cutter properties to people. So they've taken this kind of platform approach where all they're really doing is arbitraging the agency fee away, selling properties over market value, making their money up front, and then just walking away. There's no ongoing relationship there, which isn't really appealing. And, that was part of the problem with, the negative connotations about the old rent to buy homes model. So we're saying go to the open market, choose your own home the way you normally would. Give us a short list. We will vet the property as buyer's agents, right? So this turned out to be a much bigger value add for customers than we originally thought it would be. But we will act like your buyer's agents. We will thoroughly vet this property, handle all negotiation, building pests. We will negotiate very hard with the current owner of the property to make sure that you get the best possible starting price. And then, once everything checks out, we will buy the property ourselves. So we are basically the investor, the owner, and we hold the properties, and we are the platform and the agency as well.
You acquire the property. Do you settle? So let's say I pick a house, call it 800 grand. I like it. You like it. You vetted me already. Now it's time to settle. You want to do the deal. I don't have the funds because I'm going to an arrangement to rent to buy. You then settle with the vendor 800 grand. Your company does, or your structures do, correct?
Yeah, correct.
Okay,
Exactly.
So then you own the property, and then the rent to buy is between the applicant that you vetted and yourself.
Yeah, we are the lessor, they are the lessee.
You're the property owner.
We're the property manager as well.
Yes, correct. So keep going. So now I'm in the property. We've settled. You've settled. I'm in the house. So take us through the next steps of the journey. So I'm now in the house. What happens next?
Well, technically you're a renter.
Yeah.
But you have an option to buy the property. You also have the option to request a sale on the property if something goes wrong. So in which case we'll sell the property in the open market. We'll try to return as much as your equity contributions that you've made to date. And then you can walk away sort of debt-free out of the property. Once you're ready to buy the property, which you can do after 2 years, you can use the equity contributions that you build up through our model as a less deduction on the final settlement of sale. So you're basically building up a discount on the final purchase price, and the purchase price is fixed. So you know exactly what that's going to be in the future. And the way we calculate that future purchase price is by compounding 3% interest plus some fees on the back end just to cover some of the costs of the transaction.
Okay, so if the market, and this can happen for our overseas listeners in Australia, the market could move quick. So if the market has gone 20%, so you bought it for 800, now 3 years later worth $1 million, you don't go, hey, oh, hold on, let's sell, it's $1 million as the price. You still follow your model at 3%. The buy price might be 860 or whatever, 840, okay, wow. Is that correct?
Yeah. Yeah, and thank you for taking the most positive example of this, because most people start off by saying, oh, what if the market does, performs less than 3%? In which case I say, well, that really hasn't happened in any 10-year period since forever, basically. But you're right. The financial upside belongs to the customer. We're a business where we're trying to have predictability and earn a predictable or fixed fees in the beginning. So we're managing our risk, but at the same time, giving the best possible price to our customers.
Do you help them getting the finance, and do you support them in that part at all? Or is that sort of they get ready, they go to a broker themselves? How does that all work?
Yeah, when they're ready to exercise their purchase option, they can use any broker or lender of their choice. And that process for them is just going to be like buying their first home or buying any home. We may look to offer some more assistance there. I mean, we can certainly help the customers get mortgage ready by making sure they've got all the paperwork in place and they can prove a good rental history and things like that. But yeah, at a later date, we may also build in a panel of lenders. We may, do referrals to brokers. I'm not sure how that play out, but I guess we still got a few years until the first cohort of customers are ready to exercise their purchase option.
So for such a young business, tell us some of the challenges that you've faced getting this off the ground. So I'm assuming it wouldn't have been smooth sailing from day one. Talk us through some challenges and how you've potentially overcome them.
Well, with the current structure for the business, it's very capitally intensive. So, obviously raising money, trying to prove to creditors that this is a worthwhile business to back and, to step outside your normal policies or plain vanilla lending to get involved. I think that's the biggest challenge. And generally, the demand side for us is not something I spend a lot of time on now because there just seems to be unlimited demand for the product. It's really all the challenges are on the supply side. And there's two ways to solve that. There's raise a bunch of money, economize your cost of capital over time. Maybe you have to take some hurt money in the beginning, but then you build up that use case, that proof of concept, and you can bring the cost of capital down over time. Or the other way is to sort of innovate, build more of a platform, build strategic partnerships, see what sticks there, and then double down on this innovative side, which may not be capitally intensive at all. And then you can just build your business around an engineering team and a marketing and distribution team and that sort of thing that most tech companies would prefer to be doing.
So tell us the tech. So what's the technology? What's so innovative? I mean, obviously you've got a platform that brings people together. I think the solution, what you've created, this rent to buy, this point two is really, really good. And I can see a massive use case for it. But where's the technology? Where's the innovation in all of this?
Well, if we're talking software, I mean, there's not much to it. There's really onboarding application, automation, just making a really smooth, nice, online experience for customers to, get us all the information and then get pre-approved, get fully approved, deal with us, get customers, all that stuff. Not really that difficult. But if you think about technology in terms of like how the platform and the product works and in the innovation being the technology, then I think that, the lease agreement that we have, which is kind of, the culmination of 2 years of learning and refining and thinking about all the scenarios and edge cases and making it fair and equitable and making it, giving us the ability to sort of bring different participants into this model. That's really the technology that we have. And then there's also, stuff that we've had to build that just didn't exist in the property management space. Like we had to build our own trust accounting software and platform, for example. Not easy to do. In fact, we almost built out a whole separate software platform here that we could probably
market and
resell. And I was tempted to get in touch with some auditors and say, hey, would you like to use this platform that we built and you could give it to your customers for free and they can save $1,000 on Rex or whatever.
Yeah, it is.
And you
It
can
is a
use it.
pain.
All these extra examples that we've had to build internally, like there isn't, none of those property management softwares have any way of sort of calculating the equity that our customers have built up or sending them a statement that gives them an updated view of that. So we're just basically using software to automate, streamline, fix all the internal issues and all the user experience points, endpoints for our customer. And then we also have a running list of like all the, A to Z steps that we have to take in every, property acquisition and every, customer onboarding. There's about 80 steps through the whole process. And it acts like a dev roadmap for us as well. It's like, here's a bottleneck. This one can be fixed. This can be automated. We actually don't need a human in the loop here. And that's what I like working on the weekends more than during the week, because I can actually have this kind of impact, like building software and automation for the business rather than, picking up phone calls.
I think that's a big thing. We're an accounting firm here. That's our core business. And that's something that we look at all the time. And we're looking at our current software stack because we've got a few softwares in our platform, how we do our business. And some of them are just so ancient. It doesn't allow us to do those automation and cut out processes. So it's a big part of our journey at the moment where we're looking at every single thing that we do. We haven't refined it down to the 80 steps. I would be horrendous to know how many steps we take to do some of our things. But what you've been able to illustrate there is every business has processes and systems, and you've used innovation to cut them down, but then also looked at it from a customer experience perspective on how it then looks from their side. So that's awesome. Do you see any other innovative changes that's going to happen in the property space? It's sort of bricks and mortar, and it's very sort of, what you saw, what bricks and mortar was now to what it was 10 or 15 years ago. There's realestate.com that's played a big change in the market. There was a lot of things going on at one stage where people were going to cut out agencies. And, I think there was this purple website, I can't remember what it was called, where you could list
Purple
your own.
Bricks,
That's the
Yellow
one,
Bricks.
Purple Bricks, and trying to build that. I don't know if that's still around. What do you see in this property space that is going to be disruptive in the coming years?
Well, one really big picture idea that I don't know if I've heard anyone float before, maybe one friend of mine sort of planted the seed, but I think real estate is actually going to get completely turned on its head over the next 10 to 15 years.
I agree.
And it comes down to mainly self-driving cars. Because in 10 to 15 years, when your self-driving Tesla can get you into the city in 20 minutes without any traffic, and you can spread out and recline and have your coffee and scroll through the news, rather than, the hellish 1 hour commute or whatever, and all the costs involved, and it also becomes dramatically cheaper. Why are you going to spend $1.5 million for a crappy townhouse in a metro? Why are you going to do that? You're not. So the valuation of these homes are really going to change a lot. We're not really buying super in a city at the moment now either. So I think our customers are going to be a benefit from this trend if they're still in their homes in 10 to 15 years as well, because they're mainly buying bigger blocks, 40 minutes away, nicely, landscaped, stockland-esque communities, those kind of properties. But, it was a big shock to the system with COVID and all the turnover of the commercial, right?
Yeah.
I think this will be even bigger. I think that's the one thing that people need to really keep in mind, because paint me a picture where this doesn't happen in the future. You're going to be working from home, and that experience is going to be better. That augmented experience is going to be better than being in the room with people.
Well, it's going to be interesting. The space is really, look, there's so many things going on with the AI place, with the augmented reality, the Web3 stuff happening. So I think we're going to be in a very different world, Dean, and you're obviously a big player in innovating and bringing something new. What are some other advice would you give? So you're obviously ran lots of businesses and you've started this one, it's early journey. If I was a tech startup, wanted to start a tech business, what advice would you have for me so that I have the most possible chance of success?
Don't spend money. Yeah, that's it. Just like get it up and running for $0, because that's what you should be doing. Like, as the moment you have a burn, the moment you're on the hook and you're fully stressed out.
How do you do that though? How do you do it for nothing? Is that just self-sufficient code writing, using freelancers that will do it for sweat equity? How do you do it for nothing?
Maybe it was a non-starter 10 years ago. But now you've got all this leverage, all these tools. When I say nothing, maybe $1,000 a month,
Yeah.
tops for all your tools, and not paying any other employees. If you're going to bring a co-founder in and you're willing to work for free, and they're not, then maybe you should have a rethink of that, because that's going to be a stressful part of your relationship. So just getting to an MVP, getting some traction, proving that it works before you start spending money.
I'm not sure if you did this on your own and had investors, but if you did have investors and you got a lot of capital needs in your business, firstly, do you have investors, and what advice do you give to tech startups that have to then manage investors?
So, my track record with investors has been kind of hit and miss.
Okay. Well, there you go. The perfect person to answer.
Sometimes it's been very organic and natural to bring on investors for certain things. And then sometimes, you play ping pong for months and everything's really, really great. Just talking to a founder a couple of weeks ago, had a really positive looking business and should have worked really well, but he kind of got on the hook with an investor, and 12 months of promises and yes, we're going to do it, before they pulled out, and they weren't able to readjust their business in time to get ahead of that, and it ruined the business, right? So I think the best thing is just being realistic about what you can actually achieve and what kind of investors. I talked to a few of the sort of techie VCs in this space. I probably wasted a couple of months speaking to the wrong kind of investors in the beginning. Good relationships to have, maybe useful for us that are around B or around C, but this is a certain type of investor I should have gone to initially. If I had, after this experience, I just sort of know that there are different types of investors. They're going to suit you at different stages, different kinds of business. So you really just have to build a framework for who you should be approaching. And you shouldn't rely on that. You should be able to stand alone without those investors at all, because if you're sitting around waiting for them to create the traction for you, it's, there's something wrong.
So what's the long-term play for PublicSquare? Is this something that you'd like to, you mentioned the word scalable, so I'm interested to know, what does that mean? Is this a take over the world, listed on the New York Stock Exchange type of exit, or what's the plans, the long-term goals?
I think Australia's big enough. There's 500,000 residential transactions in Australia per year. And if you think about it, they're all basically done transacting exactly the same way, aren't they?
Yeah.
95% of them are one single owner, one single buyer, lump sum settlement on payment, and they involve a mortgage, right? We don't really even have buyer's agents here, which in my view actually make more sense than seller's agents. But
it is. I'm a big believer in buyer's agents. We had Emily Wallace on a previous episode, and she was amazing. And that was one of the questions. In the US, that you get represented on both sides, and here, you're left to do it on your own. I don't know. I really don't think that's the wise move from a buyer's perspective. My last question is one that I didn't have written down, but you also mentioned it a few times in our conversation today. You talked about tools. Now, obviously, some of the tools you used and use in your business to get it going might be very specific to you. But what are some of your favorite tools that you can share with our audience that might be something that we can sort of download, have a look at the website, and have a play with these tools?
Check out Airtable, airtable.com.
Yeah. Haven't heard of that one. What does that do?
Basically like a spreadsheet on steroids.
Oh, my staff will love that.
Yeah, and it will help you with the automations that you've been talking about.
Airtable. Okay, cool. So another one?
Yeah. ChatGPT.
Yeah.
All the rage now for good reason. It's really good. I actually use this. It's been really, it solves some Excel formulas for me that I could never solve through Google. I could never get the answer to them. I'd have to hack through it to do these really technical formulas. I was using it the other day, and I really just gave it a narrative about what I was trying to achieve. What happens in this scenario and this, and how do I reverse engineer X number? And I was amazed. That one answer on that, one given afternoon, it already paid for itself.
My friend of mine I don't know if this is the right terminology. I'm not a tech person, but he actually got ChatGPT to do Python code. So he asked it to do stuff. He gave it in code. He grabbed it, put it into his code thing. It worked. He then wrote some code that had errors in it. And he said, "Can you fix it?" And it was like, it's just madness. So I think anything that can save us time as humans is great. I feel like it'll, it's a bit like email though. I think we'll never ever get time back, and we'll just be busier than ever. But yeah, we've used it a little bit here, but I like Airtable, ChatGPT. One more, another favorite?
Extensions for ChatGPT.
Oh, wow. Okay.
I think it's going to be a proxy for sort of
other things,
everything
right?
that we do. It's a proxy for creating the information, a proxy for receiving it.
I feel like it's going to be there's so many use cases on how it's going to go in the years to come. And so many new businesses will be born on some of this new AI. And we're just in its infancy. So look, it's been amazing to talk to you about technology innovation, how you've used it in your business in such an industry that's been around for probably thousands of years, which is, changing ownership of property. So Dean, I want to say thank you so much. I've enjoyed the chat. I loved listening to you and your knowledge around technology and your business. Again, just want to say thank you.
Absolutely. Yeah, been really nice. Good chatting with you.
This is The Bottom Line, a show designed to help Australian businesses succeed. This podcast was produced by accountancy firm Alexander Spencer. At Alexander Spencer, we've been helping business owners realise their goals since 1952. And we play a pivotal role in developing, implementing, and supervising the business goals and strategies of our clients. To find out how we can help your business succeed, head to our website, alexanderspencer.com.au. To make sure you don't miss an episode of The Bottom Line, be sure to subscribe to or follow the show in your podcast app. And while you're there, leave us a 5-star review. It really helps others find the show. I'm Savan Tuna, and we'll be back next episode with more tips to help you transform your business. And that's The Bottom Line.